You turn on?
It started.
2, 1. It's on you, buddy.
Thank you, Daddy.
Thanks, buddy.
This
This one. Boom. Okay. Howdy! Welcome to the Whiskey Butler. I am your host, Wesley Butler. And I'm here today to spread a little whiskey wisdom to all of you out there. This episode is going to kick off my Founding Fathers of Whiskey series, which seems only appropriate for myself since I live in the Washington, D.C. area. And today we're going to talk about W.L. Weller, a.k.a. William LaRue Weller. Okay? Like many during that time being the 18th, 19th century, distilling was a family business, right? His grandfather was a distiller. W.L.'s dad was a distiller. His brothers went into distilling business with him in Louisville. His sons took over his distillery business after he retired and passed away. And even so, Phoebe LaRue, William's mother, her family was in the whiskey distilling business. So it was truly a family trade. Okay? W.L.'s grandfather, Daniel, began distilling whiskey in Kentucky in 1792. Oh, you guys thought we were going to taste whiskey? I got to give you your veggies before we get to the dessert. So I'm going to give you a little history before we get to all the rest of it. Okay. So he moved to Kentucky 1794. After he passed away, Samuel Weller, who was W.L.'s dad, he took over the distilling business. But W.L. took he took a circuitous route in the distilling business. So after he became of age, after he got grown, right, he moved to Louisville and he worked at various businesses there, salesman, so on and so forth. Then he found himself fighting in the Mexican-American War. But then after that was over, he and his brother went into business for themselves in Louisville and they started a company. It was called William LaRue Weller and Brothers. So we know who kind of got the short end of that stick, right? And so over the years, they became prominent whiskey wholesalers and blenders in the area. Now, as I do more of these episodes, you're going to hear me say this a lot. A lot of what we know about whiskey and bourbon in America, right, it's all legend, right? Not a lot was written down before Prohibition. Not a lot was written down after Prohibition. But certainly not pre-Prohibition. So a lot of things were passed down through various stories and lore and legend. Maybe you can find a will here. Maybe you can find a contract somewhere else. But a lot of it is legend, okay? And when it comes to W.L. Weller, there's two things that he is known for today, right? One of them is an undisputed fact. The other, well, it's a disputed fact, okay? So we're going to get to both of those today. The first thing, the disputed fact, right, started after he and his brother became prominent. So legend has it that W.L. was looking for a smoother bourbon, something to really help differentiate him from what was going on in the marketplace. So what did he do? He changed the mash bill on his bourbon to include wheat. Okay? So he is credited as being the inventor of the wheated bourbon. I don't really know. I mean, clearly he didn't invent wheat, so I don't know if he can really be the inventor. But he's credited as being the first person to really use a wheated mash bill. What does a wheated mash bill mean? Well, all of this is bourbon, so we know it's 51% corn. But generally, the grains used in bourbon, corn, barley, and rye. So he decided his third grain was going to be, instead of rye, it was going to be wheat, right? So he creates this wheated mash bill, and it makes this smoother tasting bourbon. Now, is that what made he and his brother's company rise to such prominence? I don't know. Legend has it that he used to have to put his thumbprint in green ink, right? So customers would know they were getting the real thing, right? So here's my thumbprint. Boom. There you go. Take that whiskey. Have a good day. All right. So this went on for about 40 years. He and his brother had this company in Louisville. There was a major thing happening in the United States at that time. Yes, it was the Civil War. Civil War was going on. William actually did not go fight in the Civil War. Several of his brothers did fight on the side of the Confederacy. He actually lost his brother Charles his business partner during the Civil War. He was reportedly murdered in Tennessee trying to collect on a business debt. William, being the good business guy that he was, decided to stay behind to try and sell as much whiskey as he could to both the North and the South, right? So after the Civil War, William's getting up in age, and he's really like, what do I do with this business? And his sons were becoming of age, so his sons really started to get involved in the day-to-day business. But then he made his second most remembered move, which is the undisputed fact. He hired a 19-year-old salesman named, anybody? Yep, named Julian Vanwinkle Sr. Yeah, everybody knows who that is, right? We'll get to that, right? So Julian Vanwinkle Sr. ends up being a salesperson, comes to work for the business. W.L. Weller retires, and his sons take over. Julian's still working there. But then after a little bit of time, probably somewhere around 1908, Julian Vanwinkle and his business partner end up buying out the Weller family from the company. So it's still, they're still making the same mash bill or whatever, and they're still involved in the day-to-day, but the owners are Van Winkle and his business partner. And then, terrible thing happens in America. Wah, wah, Prohibition. Prohibition happens. However, since they applied to get a license to continue distilling whiskey, so they distilled medicinal whiskey, right? I can't make it to this video meeting. I'm going to need a prescription. Yeah, so they got a license to sell medicinal whiskey. So this went on through Prohibition. But really what happened to Prohibition to a lot of distillers is they went out of business, right? So Van Winkle actually ended up merging the company with the Stitzel Distillery, right? So Van Winkle and the Stitzel Distillery, they merged. They come out after Prohibition, which ended in 1933. They come out after Prohibition. They're super popular using the wheated mash bill, right? Which is where Van Winkle ends up becoming known as Pappy, right? So we have the Pappy Van Winkle, we got the wheated mash bill, and that's really what happened to W.L. Weller. So over the years, the distillery has changed hands. It's now owned by Sazerac. It's made at Buffalo Trace. And those are your veggies. Now time for dessert. Let's get on to the bourbon tasting, which is really what you tuned in for. All right. So we're going to start out with this one right here in the middle. This is the Weller Special Reserve, right? So in the Weller family brands of bourbon, we got 7 different bourbons. We have 3 of them here today. We're gonna start out with the Weller Special Reserve, which is considered the entry level of the Weller family brands. Now, the Buffalo Trace mash bill that's used for this is considered proprietary. Yes, we know that it has wheat in the mash bill instead of rye, but we don't know what the percentages are. We don't know what the aging is, although this does say that it is a Kentucky straight bourbon. So for all of you bourbon aficionados, actually for all you whiskey aficionados out there, if something says it's a straight bourbon whiskey, that means it's been aged for? Yes, 2 years, 2 years. You can just say it out loud if you know the answer. Just say it out loud. It's okay. So we're going to go ahead and try this. All right. All right. It's 90 proof. It's 90 proof. So 80 proof is the minimum for a whiskey in the United States. So 90 proof, not at the minimum, but we're going to see what we have here. Okay, it's got a good nose. It's got a good nose. It's got a good nose. Now, everyone has their own palate, right? So your palate may be more one way, somebody else's palate may be more the other way. You might be allergic to wheat. So when I say wheated mash bill, you might actually break out into hives. That is definitely not anything I want. It's okay. It's all right. I tend to like wheated mash bill, so we're gonna see how this one tastes. I mean, I know how it tastes because I've actually had this, whatever. But I'm gonna make you think I haven't. The nose on it, it's a very mild nose, right? It doesn't just hit you right there. I mean, maybe that's the 90 proof, maybe that's the mash bill, whatever. I mean, there's lots of different things that I could do to describe this, right? It does have some fruit taste to it in there. Don't really know what kind of fruit. Maybe like strawberry-ish or whatever. You certainly taste the vanilla and the caramel, but the wheat smooths it out, right? You don't get a lot of bite. You don't get a lot of bite on the front end. You don't get a lot of bite on the back end. It's just really smooth, so you can really just sort of enjoy the flavors. I mean, if this were readily available at a reasonable price, this would probably be my house bourbon, right? I could totally see this being my house bourbon. I mean, the suggested retail price on this is about $30. You'd be hard pressed to find this for $30 in a lot of liquor stores. Supply and demand, man. Supply and demand. Yeah, I don't suggest paying super duper a lot for this, even though it is good. It is good. You know, I mean, don't break your budget, because there's going to be a lot of things that you can get. If you find this in a store for $100, I'm not going to say you should go out and get it for $100 unless you're a collector and this is the absolute last thing you need in your collection. Then fine, pay the $100, build up the collection. But if you can find it, and you know, rumor has it they sell handles of this stuff in some states for a reasonable price, right? I need to go there so I can buy handles of this so it can become my house bourbon. So actually that reminds me of a funny story. Let me get my drink here so I can tell you this funny story. So I was recently at my mom's house, right? And I had bought a couple of bottles of bourbon. Not all I could transport back with me here, right? So I was leaving some there, but I needed to hide them in the house so other people didn't get their hands on my bourbon. So as I'm looking for a place to hide my bourbon, all of a sudden I come across a handle of Weller Special Reserve. I'm like, where did my mom get a handle of Weller Special Reserve? Yeah, clearly it had not been purchased recently because it was very dusty and it had a very worn out price tag on it that said $26. $26 for a handle of Weller Special Reserve. I could not believe it. It's like, where did my mama find a $26 handle of it? You know what? I didn't even ask the question. I did taste it. It had been there for a really long time. Didn't taste very good. Certainly didn't taste like this. This is fresh. That was not, okay? But anyway, still, found the bottle. I may have replaced that with a fresh bottle of Weller Special Reserve at my mom's house. Still hidden, and I'm not going to tell you where it is. But anyway, so Weller Special Reserve, good one if you can pick it up. I want you guys to check out part 2 of this episode where we're going to try these other two. Thank you for watching. Please, let's see, what am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to say, please share, like, and subscribe to the Whiskey Butler on YouTube. And catch you next time. Thanks for watching.